Mushoku Tensei Cut Content, this time focusing on the rich lore, the dark history of this isekai world. A long time before Rudy ever met Truckun. All of this is something you would have found out from the anime when Rudy was looking over some books. Once upon a time, over 100,000 years ago, this time period was called the Ancient Age of the Gods. The Mushoku Isekai world was split into 7 smaller worlds. Each one of these worlds had its own god that ruled over it. The 7 worlds and their corresponding gods were as followed. The human world, ruled by the human god. The demon world, ruled by the demon god. The dragon world, ruled by the dragon god. The beast world, ruled by the beast the beast god. The ocean world, ruled by the sea god. The sky world, ruled by the sky god. And the barren world and its barren god. All of these 7 worlds were actually separated by this barrier. So as you would imagine, you couldn't just take a vacation over to a different one. In fact, someone that lived in one specific world was completely oblivious that there were any others. For example, let's say you're Rudyard. You wouldn't care about little dragon or human kids since you wouldn't even know about their existence. But at the time, there were people that did know about the various worlds. That included the mentioned gods, but also anyone strong enough to cross the barriers. You could imagine who those may be. Once upon a time, 20,000 to 10,000 years ago. Focusing on the dragon world, you had this evil dragon god that was born. This guy was so wicked, so overpowered, that he actually destroyed the barrier separating all the 7 worlds. But that was just the beginning. The guy had his followers known as the 5 Dragon Commanders. Together, he began invading and destroying the other worlds. Anyone that survived from this destroyed world, they fled over to any other world to seek refuge. Eventually it got to the point that there was only one world left. Who knows why it took so long, but this is when the Dragon God's commanders finally turned on him. I mean, come on, this guy would make Thanos blush. It must have been a glorious isekai fight. On one side you had the 5 Dragon Commanders, which included the head, the Dragon Emperor, and the 4 Dragon Kings that fought versus the Dragon God. 5 versus 1, a battle to the death. But who ultimately won? According to history, supposedly this ended in a draw. As a result, the dragon world completely crumbled in the aftermath. That left only the human world. Aren't we so lucky? This is currently the world you're familiar with in the anime. 10,000 to 8,000 years ago. In the timeline, this was known as the Chaotic Period. You can imagine the aftermath with all these 7 worlds now combining into a single mass. You now had the ancestors of modern humans and all the refugees coming together. Naturally, they started fighting. Unfortunately, what unfolded here has been lost to time, that there is almost no literature from this time period. But according to scholars from what's been passed down, after many years of carnage and fighting, all of these 7 races slowly started to become separated and segregated. You had the beast tribes that went to go live in the forest and woods. You had the water folk like Mermaid controlling the oceans, they get all the sushi. And the KFC people that went to the highest places like the mountains they could find. But how about those Targaryens, the dragon tribe? These guys chose to avoid the spotlight and lived secretly. For the Void people, this was a tribe that was able to live anywhere, so they really just spread themselves out. You now start getting a picture of the current situation. This left the humans and the demons to fight each other in whatever land was left over. Over 9,000 years ago, the Demon Continent and the Central Continent were still joined together. At the time, it was known as the Great Continent. Approximately 7,000 years ago, at last, martial arts and magic were developed. At the same time, the population was increasing. This also happened to be when the first great human-demon war happened. Like you could imagine, it was really just this head-on collision between the humans and demons. They were just tired of each other. You could think of this as being like a world war, only the isekai edition. Which really just means it had this colossal scope. It wasn't only humans versus demons. Every other race got involved too in some way. Approximately 6,000 years ago. So this is surprising. For like 1,000 years, the Great War raged on. It's almost hard to imagine. Among all of this arose the hero known as Aras. Aras led his 6 companions into the battle. He fought bravely and continuously until he defeated the 5 great demon kings. On top of this, also the great emperor of the demon world. You've met that loli before, Kishirika. Although let's just say, I guarantee you she looked different back then. Approximately 5,500 years ago, history really credits humans as being truly foolish, that humans got drunk off of all that power. They not only defeated the demons, they began fighting and having wars with the other remaining races. Eventually it got to the point that even the humans were fighting amongst themselves. Sounds like a certain great titan history. Unfortunately, it seems like the demons got the worst of it. History does mention demons being used as slaves during this time. All the fighting and wars during this period continued for almost 500 years. 5,000 years ago. Let's go! You have the second great human-demon war that broke out. Welcome back, Kishirika, the great emperor of the demon world. She was still pissed off about losing 1,000 years ago, so she wanted revenge. This is why Kishirika rallied up the demons to go into war again. And just to confirm, this was the same Kishirika from before, it wasn't just a title. So yes, apparently Kishirika, the little loli, is immortal. Even if she died, she could revive a few hundred years later. I would suggest someone stealing her, but is she really that much of a threat? In case you were wondering why she has a title, the Great Emperor, it might really just be to her having a rank above the other Dragon Emperors. Either way, back to the war situation, this time the demons actually allied with the Beast Folk and the Sea Folk. Them all united together finally overwhelmed the human race. Humans were driven into this corner. 4,200 years ago. Just under 1,000 years later, the second great human demon war finally concluded. Apparently all this time, the humans for 800 years were thirsty for battle. They would not admit defeat. There was finally a turning point where they could force their enemies back. Let's give a warm welcome to the Golden Knight Aldebaran. This is the legendary hero that the humans have to give thanks to. Did someone say overpowered isekai character? This guy mowed down over 1,000 people by himself. He destroyed all the powerful demons he encountered. He fought the Great Demon Emperor single-handedly. And get this, his final attack was so powerful that it created that hole in the Great Continent. That it freaking split the Central Continent and the Demon Continent. This guy would make One Punch Man wet. This resulted in the Ringa Sea in between the two continents. There was actually one historical record that claimed this was the human god himself. It's funny because Rudy questioned the whole event. Was it just like a fairy tale? Some exaggeration. Cause Rudy felt this whole splitting of the continent was hot steaming BS. Definitely let me know what you think about this, whether you buy it. Either way, ultimately the important part is that this resulted in peace. Once the two continents were split, peace settled. 4,200 years ago to 1,000 years ago. This like 3,000 period passed by pretty quickly. The world was at peace. Although not everyone was too happy, you did have the demons being shunned away from the Central Continent. History just so happens to describe the humans as being clever during this time, that they used politics and diplomacy to get all the demons over to the Demon Continent. From the anime, I'm sure you've noticed how vastly different the two continents are. In the Central Continent, you do have land that's flourishing and easy to live on. On the flip side, you have the complete opposite with the Demon Continent. The place is all barren, there's powerful monsters, and it's actually prone to magic gathering up in certain areas. Really, with the humans forcing all the demons over to the Demon Continent, they were pretty much getting everything they wanted. They were practically suffocating them. Keep in mind, all of this was actually done with the help of the other races. It was with the hope that there will hopefully never be another great human-demon war ever again. And who knows, perhaps the demons resisted all of this in some way. After all, they were pretty much the ones being persecuted and restricted. In whatever way the demon tribe reacted, the history books do not go into detail. Whatever that reaction was, just know there was no war that broke out during this time. The demons eventually became desensitized and got used to having all of these restrictions about not leaving their continent. Just stay in that birdcage. You won't be surprised to find out all of these civil wars that broke out just fighting over these scarce resources. Naturally, this was a negative, but also in some ways you could look at this as a positive. You had the number of demons being whittled down. On the flip side, it did shape them into becoming these ferocious warriors. 1,000 years ago, the ultimate demon god Laplands came into being. In the long demon history, you had so many demon kings, demon lords, and demon emperors. But move over, there was ultimately only one known as a demon god. Laplands really was no joke. In this blink of an eye, the demon god rallied all the demons and then conquered the entire demon continent. The interesting part about this is that the records from those battles at the time actually got turned into war chronicles that are still being passed down. Even in the current time period in the anime, Laplands is treated like this idol, like this famous person over on the Demon Continent. Just imagine The Rock, but like more demonish with like more arms. In the years that followed, Laplands actually spent his time cultivating his empire. The demon god was actually grooming the demon races to become tougher and fiercer than ever before. 500 years ago, this was the start of Laplance's military campaign. The first priority for the demon god was to get the seaman folk and the beast tribes over on his side. This took some long years winning them over, but once that alliance was established, the demon god launched his assault on the central continent. The humans maybe were taking it way too easy, because they were forced into this war far more brutal, far fiercer than they fought in the past. Laplance actually launched his invasion from the south. He was hoping to draw all the human military power over there. The demon god then set his Virms onto the land, resulting in passage through the mountains impossible. You had the humans being split from the north and the south. In a very short time, Laplance gained control of the north and the south. From both directions, the dragon god continued his assault over to the western region. So from history, Laplance was either this great commander, or the humans just got way too comfortable in their position, or a mixture of both. 400 years ago, the humans once again found themselves being pushed into this corner, so the humans took their last gamble. The 7 heroes at the time convinced the Sea Tribe to lift the blockage. This was cutting off the sea and their reach over to the Millis continent. Millis had actually escaped any of the wrath of the demon god, so they faced no invasions. This is due to things like the barrier around the Holy Millis, this powerful army of holy knights, and really just dumb luck that they had this perfect geography that made it difficult for large armies to disembark. You also do have to give thanks to the Great Forest. This forest covered the north part, which aided them being isolated. On the flip side, you now had the beast tribe that allied with the demons. Oh, did I say Millis escaped the invasion? Post-alliance, the beast folk actually finally got control of the holy city of Millis. The history books then mention the 7 heroes actually persuaded the beast folk to come over to their side. These supposed heroes took the head of each of their clan. They took their children hostage, which pretty much means threatening them to switch sides. And here's a part that just echoes, history is written by the victors. The history books do mention that the children they kidnapped supposedly helped willingly. I'll just emphasize that it really should make you question a lot of this, hint hint. Anyway, moving forward, you had the day of the decisive battle. You had one last remaining human kingdom on the central continent. You know this as the Kingdom of Asura. All of these guys prepared for the final battle. You then had the combined forces of the 7 heroes, the Holy Knights of Millis, and the Beast Folk, all launching this combined assault on the Laplance made stronghold. After this gruesome, lengthy, violent confrontation, 4 of the 7 heroes ultimately died. On the flip side, all of Laplance's closest companions perished. Unfortunately, the demon god himself, Laplance, was not killed. Instead, he was successfully sealed away. At the very least, you did have 3 heroes that survived. You had the Dragon King Europen, the Northern god Cowman, and the armored Dragon King Pergius. The history book now refers to them as the 3 legendary demon god slayers. It's funny because Rudy got a little annoyed at this because they technically didn't slay anything. You know, the demon god being sealed instead. Following the demon god being defeated, the human side was greatly exhausted from all the fighting. They didn't have the resources to continue. So now you have history repeating itself. The human side settled on signing a treaty with one of the demon kings back on the demon continent. This was one of the demon kings that was not allied with Lapland, and actually had a moderate faction of the demons. As a result of this treaty, the blockage on the demon continent was lifted. Hooray! Demons could travel between both of the continents once again. This horrible discrimination against demons was prohibited. But you know, Millis will be Millis. A comparison to our world could be the United Declaration of Human Rights. 400 years later, freaking finally present day. For hundreds of years, you did see discrimination and hatred towards demons that continued. Sorry, Roxy. As a positive, things were peaceful. So now diving into the juicy lore from the present day that resulted from everything we just talked about. For example, the number 7. Cutting things off here was done for historical reasons. This went back to there being 7 legendary heroes, and also 7 worlds. Just like for us, 7 is considered a lucky number. In Mushoku Isekai Land, 13 is not unlucky, but 6 is horribly unlucky. You did have 5 dragon generals and 5 great demon kings. This became 6 when you counted their respective leaders. As for other races like the elves, dwarves, and halflings, they were technically subspecies, but it seems humans counted them as demons. It is possible that these near races like elves and dwarves resulted during the chaotic period, this going back over 9,000 years ago. Or perhaps it could have had something to do with the Baron folk that came over first. It is also interesting to notice that even though some of the written stuff is no longer around, knowledge of this long history does exist, mainly because there are some species that are immortal. For example, that great demon emperor Kirishima or some other demon kings. Who knows, perhaps there's some magic that makes them live forever. From this, you also start getting an idea of how languages were developed. For example, you do have the central continent that does use the human tongue. The beast god tongue is used over on the northern part of Milis. The fighting god tongue is used over on the Begaric continent. The sky god tongue is used over on the divine continent. As you've seen, the demon god tongue is used over on the demon continent. And number 7, the sea god tongue is used throughout the seas. All of these languages are named after the gods of the various races that are specific to different continents. You might have noticed that the human language is the only one that's slightly different. Who knows, perhaps the human god may be pissed about that. From the humans that actually speak the human tongue on the central continent, you do have 3 groups, or should I say divided into 3 regions, the north, west, and south. Each of the human language in the regions does vary slightly. Compare it to English being spoken by an American to British English. Take Rudy for example. This guy speaks a western dialect of the human tongue. Taking a look at the Milis continent, this one's split between the north and the south. The north part of this does speak the god tongue language, since you know, they have that giant great forest. While the south focuses on the human tongue. And for the vast sea, you do have the sea folk that live throughout all of the water in the world. So hope you enjoyed this rich Mushoku Tensei lore. It's honestly some of the best stuff I love from the series. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed. Unfortunately, let me apologize and also say this is probably my last lore for Mushoku Tensei. Definitely take a look at my in-depth Mushoku videos from the first season. I hope this video doesn't get taken down. I really need to start Mushoku Tensei Season 2. Let me know if you're enjoying that or just say hi down below and I'll catch you guys later.